on our online ministry, House of Many Waters. I want to thank all of you that are so supportive in watching us, always commenting. And believe me, we read every single comment. It helps us to see where we're at, what we're delivering, how it's being understood, and so forth. So again, thank you so much for joining with us tonight, especially those that have been with us now for years. Bless you on your journey, and pray that the Lord is just continually giving you more and more understanding. Remember, wisdom is the principal thing, but with all you're getting, get understanding. Now, before I start tonight, 3 quick announcements for the COA family. First of all, this coming Friday, my sister Deneen leads off the women's gathering, women's fellowship, 7 o'clock here at the church. And then our ministry of intercessors will be at Pearsall Park here in San Antonio. That's Elevate at, I believe, 4 o'clock, ministering to the people in the neighborhood, giving out drinks, and especially prayer and prophetic ministry. So want to go and support Elevate Ministry this coming Saturday at Pearsall Park. Thirdly, don't forget on the 15th of this month, it'll be on a Friday, that will be our next prophetic worship, 7 o'clock, with our brother Adam Pardo and his crew. So again, those announcements real quick so you can understand what's going on here at Church of Acts. All right, here's the title tonight. And you know I'm a very, very big guy on titles. A type of him who was to come. Turn in the book of Romans, chapter 5, verse 14. Now, Romans chapter 5, we find this whole discussion of, through the disobedience of one, all were made sinners. Through the obedience of one, all were made the righteousness of God. That's Romans chapter 5. Then Romans chapter 6 is a believer's death certificate. So, well, Pastor, how can I, who's still breathing and living, have a death certificate? Because again, religion can only take you to the line and show you what the Lord has done for you. But the truth of the matter is this: Romans chapter 6 declares to you what Christ has done as you. Through the incarnation, Isaiah 7:14, he was born as you. He's the Son of Man. And the church has eclipsed the incarnation, where, yes, people believe in Jesus Christ, but they somehow have lost the understanding of the Son of Man. Now, Son of God, no problem with that. But Son of Man narrows it down to humanity. Not only is he God, but he's God in flesh, God incarnate. So, what we find here in Romans chapter 5, again in verse 14, I want to read it for you real quick. It states this: nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who had not sinned according to the likeness of the transgression of Adam, who is a type of him who was to come. Now notice, Adam is a type of him who was to come. Now, in average conversation, whenever Adam's name is brought up, of course, we think of the fall, sin, transgression, disobedience, all the things that occurred in the fall. But remember, I am very, very adamant on origin. And I repeat to you again, when origin is not understood, abuse will always be present. So to understand the origin of the first Adam, because Paul writes to us in 1 Corinthians 15, and he talks about the first Adam, which is the one that fell, then the last Adam, which is Christ, who came to undo Adam. That's very important. In the incarnation, the last Adam, Christ, the Son of Man, came to undo. Remember John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. Verse 14, the Word became flesh. In other words, by now you should have already memorized these two verses. Romans 8:3, 2 Corinthians 5:21. He who knew no sin became sin for us. He came in the likeness of sinful flesh, but never knowing sin. Now, Adam knew sin. Now, I'll get to that in a minute. But the last Adam, though he was in likeness of sinful flesh, he's saying, okay, Father, when I go to the earth, and I will come through the virgin birth, the incarnate one, the Son of Man, I want to be clothed with a human body that was just like Adam after the fall, so that I can redeem man, reconcile man, and bring man back to the righteousness of my Father, as if though man had never sinned. That was the whole course of God coming, 100% deity, 100% human. That's how we're reconciled. 2 Corinthians 5:21, God was in Christ, reconciling the cosmos back unto himself. So, again, verse 14, it says that one, a type of him who was to come. So, let's put the fall aside. Let's just say the fall has not occurred. Have you ever considered this creature called Adam and the glory that was placed upon this man? Now, God already knowing the choice he would make, Revelation 13:8, the lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world, which means that Christ already knew he was coming before there was ever even a problem. So with that verse alone, Revelation 13:8, Christ made you holy before Adam made you a sinner. So, as we consider this, let's look at this creature. His name is Adam. But if you look at Adam and just study him through the lenses of the fall, you will miss out on the profoundness of what God did to place this creature in creation. Not only that, but to put him and place him above all creation. Now, as you recall, he placed him in the Garden of Eden. Eden means pleasures. So he put this creature named Adam, which is the first Adam, according to Paul's writing. He placed him in the garden. What was the garden? The garden was the merging place of heaven on earth. What was the prayer of Jesus? In Matthew 6:9-10. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. 1 Timothy 1:17, to the King eternal, tells you two things. There's always been a king, and a king has to have a kingdom. So the kingdom of heaven now merged upon the earth, and it's called the Garden of Eden. So of all places, God places this creature named Adam. He places him right in the midst of everything which was the will, the design of God, so that heaven and earth could be one, united, and common place. If you know anything about history in the Old Testament, whenever a king would go to war, whatever land, people he would conquer is what he would do. Afterwards, he would send ambassadors to that conquered land. Now, an ambassador would do this. He would make that conquered land like the homeland. So if the king ever desired to go and visit this land that he has conquered, that is now a part of the homeland, when he would arrive, he would feel like he was at home. The culture was now different, like it was at home. The language, everything was now just like the kingdom that king reigned in. Therefore, with that in mind, here's God with the overflow of the Father, Son, and Spirit saying, let's create heaven and earth. Where was heaven? Where was earth? Within him. Hebrews 11 says, he did not take anything from any place to create anything. He just spoke it and it was. So as you read Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Where were they? They were all inside of his bosom. As he spoke, everything was done. So now, through the overflow of the triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit, he now makes man. But before that, remember this. In Genesis chapter 1, we find this writing. Everything was created according to its own kind. Every seed yielding, whether it was a plant, tree, everything was according to its kind. That seed could only reproduce in its own kind. Apples could only produce apple trees. It was a law. It was a principle. But as you read there in Genesis, all of a sudden, as you read like 5 times, and according to its kind, according to its kind, according to its kind, and all of a sudden, without any interruption, he says this in Genesis 1:26. Now, let us make man in our likeness and in our image. Now, did you catch that? Monkeys can only produce monkeys. Horses, horses. Zebras, zebras. As he goes down the line in creation with that principle of the first mention, that everything according to its own kind, starting off in Genesis 1:11, then we get down to verse 26, says, now, let us, the Trinity, create man in our likeness and in our image. So with the same principle, according to its own kind, what's the Lord saying in Genesis chapter 1? That man will be like one of us. Now, if you look at the scripture in Genesis chapter 3, verse 21, 22, after the fall, after God cursed the serpent, after God told Adam from the sweat of his brow, he placed food upon his table. When he told the woman, you shall also be in labor and suffer, bringing forth a child. But then, verse 21, he says, he took 2 animal tunics, covered Adam, covered Eve. Why? The last verse of chapter 2 says this, and man was created, and though he was naked, he was unashamed. God created him that way. Likeness and image. But after Adam fell, first thing he said, Lord, I'm hiding, for I am naked, and now I have shame. What was God's response? Who told you you were naked? Who have you been speaking to? Who are you listening to? I was the only voice. I was the only mentor. I was the only instructor. There was nothing else. Did you partake of the tree that I told you would bring you death? So now we're getting somewhere. So stay with me. So as we find here in Romans 5:14 that Adam, who's a type of him who was to come before the fall, look at this creation. In the garden. And in this garden, again, heaven merged on earth. And of all places, God chose, I will place this creature, the first Adam, right in the midst of it all. When God did that, we fail to see, again, if you're not big on origin, you're going to miss it. The first mention, the creature Adam, is in the midst of the merging of heaven on earth. Then he tells him, now, what I want you to do with this image that is upon you, as we are in heaven, you are to be on earth. With the image. Now remember, and you need to understand this. When man fell, the likeness still remained. But the focus was lost on the image. What is the importance of the image? 5 things. He says, with the image, Adam, be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, have dominion. Did you catch that? Have dominion. With everything that I'm giving you, take it all. But that last one, have dominion. Well, when you look at creation, everything was great. There was peace. There was, life, the texture, the sound, the breath of everything that was living. It was heaven on earth in the garden. And he's placing this man already knowing what he would do. What I told you in Genesis 3:21, when he took the animal tunics and he covered him, then he says this in the next verse, now man has become like one of us, stating, because one of us, the Son of Man, the Son of God, will become like one of them. To do what? To undo. And instead of us being sinners, we are now, by faith, the righteousness of God. So, before we're so quick to judge Adam, we're so quick to see all of the consequences of his wrong choice. Let's look at the weightiness that was upon this creature. There's no other human being on the face of the earth, just the animal kingdom. That which is in the sea, the fowls of the air, creeping things, everything. But there's only one in likeness and image. Now, the reason, again, why those 5 things are of such importance, because in Luke chapter 19, verse 10, it states this, this is Jesus talking, I, the Son of Man, has come to seek and save that which was lost. Seek it, save it. What was lost? The image. What is the image for? To be fruitful, to multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion. So the last Adam, Jesus, comes to restore everything back to humanity that was lost through the first Adam. But notice the title again, a type of him who was to come. Who was to come? The last Adam. But yet, Paul says, Adam was a type of the one that was coming. We've always seen him as, man, when I get to heaven, The first two people, first I want to meet Jesus. Secondly, this guy named Adam. What was he thinking? He was thinking exactly what you would have thought and done. No difference. But Adam is placed as the main man, the voice, that whatever he spoke, in fact, when he walked with God, he was co-creating with God. You find it there in Genesis. It says, Adam, what do you think about these particular things? Name them. And remember, he didn't just name certain things. The name also gave its display, its function, its activity on the earth. And that's pretty weighty, if you ask me. So he's not just walking with God, not just talking with God, not just understanding him with the same language, but he's even in unity in co-creating. That is amazing, people. So as we're looking at this particular man, it mentions this in Genesis, that in the garden, everything was reproducing according to its kind, and every tree was good for sight, good for food. He says, but also in the garden was the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why is that important? Now, I'm not concluding with this, but it did not say, as it did the other trees that were planted in the garden, did not say about the planting of those two trees by name. It says, and also in the garden, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But here's a question. If this creature, Adam, was so profoundly created, what was the fullness, what was the quality, the quantity of his likeness and image that God would add to the garden a tree of life, he was living, and a tree of knowledge of good and evil? So just ponder on that for a second. You have this amazing garden, the garden of pleasures, that's Eden. It is the merging of heaven on earth. Heaven was on earth. And Adam was given the right, given the power, the authority, the dominion to spread what was in the garden throughout the entire globe. So man, when you look at it in that manner, Adam was a pretty hefty guy with the word that God had spoken over him. But again, the question, if he's in likeness and image of Father, Son, and Spirit, why are those two trees added? Tree of life, tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Food for thought. With what God had already given Adam, we have to understand this. And I get this question all the time. Pastor, why are things so bad on the earth? Where is God's intervention? Why isn't God, if God is a God of love, God of mercy, where is he? Why isn't he answering our prayers? All you got to do is just speak, and with the blast of his nostrils, he can make everything right. But you forget something that's very, very key. And it's this. In all the profoundness of this creature called Adam, first Adam, he also gave him a will. That's where a lot of the church is confused. Psalm 115, verse 15 and 16. The heaven, yea, heavens, are the Lord's. But he has given the earth. Did you hear that? He has given the earth to the children of men. So what's occurring on earth right now in March of 2024 is not God's doing. Now, God's doing is this. Book of Daniel, chapter 2, chapter 7. My kingdom is ever increasing and everlasting. Cannot be destroyed. And Jesus came to establish that. Because the first Adam forfeited over the dominion to the kingdom. So when we look at this, again, God said, look, what do you mean, why haven't I done something? I even came down myself in the incarnation, born of a virgin. At age 12, I said, I'm about my Father's business. Age 30, went to be baptized by John the Baptist, into my ministry for 3.5 years. What do you mean, why am I not doing anything? I already did. I even came to undo all the casualty of the first Adam. But yet, you still walk on this earth that I created for humanity without understanding. That's what you see today. Man doesn't understand. God's a God of purpose. Every single living being. There's never been a one that's ever been birthed to live without purpose. God is a God of purpose. So you have to ask yourself, okay, God, if you're a God of purpose, and I'm not here by mistake, I had no vote in the life, didn't win the lottery of life, I didn't come before you, God, I'm spirit, can I have a body? No, it was all your choice, your desire. You're here by divine appointment. As Scripture says, for such a time as this, God placed you here. Didn't bring you here in the days of Moses, didn't place you on the earth in the days of Jesus. You are here for such a time as this, but with a purpose. As we look at that, again, we find this is also found in Daniel chapter 7. When Jesus, the Son of Man, ascended after the 3 days being buried, resurrects, therefore 40 days and 40 nights, talking to the disciples about the kingdom. Then in the ascension, Daniel chapter 7 picks it up. One like the Son of Man was brought before the Ancient of Days. As he was brought, he was given 3 things: dominion, glory, and a kingdom. How ironic. What did he give the first Adam? Dominion, Genesis 1:26. Glory, he was walking with a glorious God in likeness and image. If God had glory, so did Adam. And a kingdom, the Garden of Eden, the merging place of heaven and earth on this earth. So, before we talk about Adam's fall, Adam's disobedience, Adam's hearing amiss, what it says in Romans. Disobedience means hearing amiss. So, with that in mind, what was the hearing amiss? Well, God creates him in likeness and image, co-creating, walking with him, talking with him. Everything is beautiful, perfect, until he hears another voice. Genesis chapter 3, verse 5. And the serpent says, listen, Adam, I'm going to tell you why he does not want you to partake of this tree of knowledge of good and evil. Because the day you partake of it, he knows you will become just like him. That's got will written all over it. Will you obey? Will you disobey? It's on the same creature that everything else was placed upon his shoulders, upon this one man. So he's walking with God, co-creating with God, but just a mere suggestion. Adam, can I suggest something? I know this God, and well did he know. I've been there. I've seen him. He's amazing. But here's the catch. If you partake, that's got religion written all over it. If you do this, you'll be okay with God. Go to church, give some money, do this, do that, read the Bible, pray, fast, do. That's an old paradigm. You do to get. The truth of the matter is, you get it all without doing anything. He already did it for you. Now, again, alert button. I'm not saying you can live any way you choose. Please don't misunderstand my theology. But getting back to Adam. So here's Adam with everything on him, and the serpent sees this. He said, look, it's simple, man. He's holding something back from you. And he knows you partake of this knowledge, you will be like him. What was the downfall? What was the lie? Adam already was. Just like God, in likeness and in image. Look, check this out. When you look at it, back in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 through 9, it says this about Adam. Formed man of the dust of the ground. That's pretty awesome. Secondly, breathe into his nostrils the breath of life. That's amazing. This has not been done to any other part of creation. Thirdly, man became a living being, sustained, maintained. Next, put the man in the garden, the place of heaven and earth. And out of that ground, God told him, have dominion over everything. But there are two trees. The tree of life will give you eternal life. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil will bring you death. So if you go on to read Genesis chapter 3, verse 24, he says, now I must take man, now that he's fallen, out of the garden. Because I already know him. He partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Surely he will now go and partake of the tree of life and live forever. I'm not a man that I should lie. But I don't want man that represents all humanity to live forever in that state of a fallen mind. So God took him out of the garden, placed cherubims to save the way. Here comes Jesus, the last Adam. I am the way. John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and life. So notice, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, in Genesis 3, 21, 22, it says, now man, like us, knows both good and evil. But here's the separating. God knows evil through his holiness. God does not know evil by partaking of it. He wanted Adam to know both good and evil through the lenses of God, but not being a participant of the evil. Jesus, the last Adam, came, chose to come in likeness of sinful flesh but he never knew evil by partaking of it. But his very nature, his very character, his very mindset, the way that he thought, had already concluded that evil was evil without partaking of it. Here's another question. Why would God ever create anything evil? Well, let me read it to you. The answer is, he never did. In Genesis, I want you to see this with me. In Genesis chapter, verse 31. Genesis 1:31. Then God saw everything that he made, and indeed it was very good. The evening, the morning, was the sixth day. And chapter 2, verse 1, and God rested from a finished work. Here's the question again. If he placed the tree of life in the midst of the garden and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, why would God create evil? We just read, he created everything, and everything was very good. There was no evil on the tree. Just food for thought. Please, I am not driving you to your own conclusions. Listen to what I'm bringing forth, and you come to your own conclusions. This is your journey, not mine. Now I'm showing you in my journey what I have concluded to, but you must make that for yourself. So, if everything was good, then God rested from a finished work. What could possibly have been on the tree of good and evil? Was it rotten fruit? They look all dry and, no leaves, just, horrendous sight? I don't think so. It's in the garden of pleasures, next there to the tree of life, in the midst of the garden. But simply God speaking, this is a knowledge of good and evil. My thought is this: just because God spoke that it was good and evil, that alone concludes that it's evil. You don't have to study it. You don't have to dissect it. See the difference between the leaves, the roots, nothing. God said it, and it was. God spoke it, and it was done. God said, let there be light. There was light. God said this, it was that. Simple as that. So again, food for thought. Why would God, in a perfect world, with a perfect creation and a perfect creature over that creation, where would evil even come in? Again, you go Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and everything was good. Everything was very good. And all of a sudden, chapter 2, verse 17, it's like night and day. And if you partake of this tree, surely you will die. Wait a minute. Death. What's that? I look around, everything's living in abundance, in fruitfulness. What is death? I'm imagining what's going through the mind of Adam. He said, death, what's that? All I see is life. Now, when Adam partook, in chapter 3, verse 6, and when the woman saw that this tree, the knowledge of good and evil, was good for food, God said. Pleasant to the sight, God said. Every tree. But God did not say the third part. And a tree to make one wise. It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that would produce death. What was the evilness of it? God said, it's good and evil. That's a knowledge that's outside of me, Adam. You partake of that knowledge, you're going to die. Now, I want you to understand what I'm saying, saints. You must come to your own conclusion. How can this God, who is good, a good God, who's only made everything in its perfection, make a tree that has good and evil? It goes against its nature. So what was the evil part? God said it was evil. That's all Adam needed to know. But they added. Remember, I've told you before, in Genesis 3:6, and when the woman saw, so did she see with her eyes or did she see with her mind? I've concluded she saw with her mind. Yes, to the physical eyes we see, but this is how you see. Somebody can see one thing, you look at the very same thing, but you're seeing it different. Are your eyes different? No. It's your mindset. It's your conclusion. Also your illusions and delusion. Adam became delusional. Walking with God, now he's running away from him. Talking with God, now he's afraid to meet with him. Totally naked, unashamed, now he's taking fig leaves and he's covering himself. That's a picture of religion. Sunday morning, everybody's got their Sunday best. They're going to church to hear the gospel, to do this, do that. But now come Monday, the whole mindset changes. It's Monday now. It's different. Yesterday was Sunday. Come Saturday, Sundays are coming. Change the mindset. Get back into that routine. No, saints. The truth about the kingdom, it's an everyday life that comes from you setting your mind upon that which is eternal. So again, here with this, now we have a Garden of Eden. Man's taken out. It's now being guarded with angelic beings to save that way. But I told you, here's this man formed of the dust of the ground. Now, that says a lot. Today, man is more dependent on pharmaceuticals. Why was man taken from the ground? Because all the herbs that man would ever need are still in the ground. The man's partaken of a knowledge that's outside of God. Am I saying doctors are evil? Doctors are demons? No. Don't do that. Am I against doctors? No. Against medical practice? No. I'm giving you back the origin. Why? Why you got to take him out of the ocean? Because you're not a fish. Took you out of the ground, formed the body, breathed through the nostrils, and every living thing was subject to the glory of Adam. I picture it this way. As God is walking in the garden and man is walking with him, glory and glory, everything was facing and looking at the glory of this creator and the creation called man. Pastor, how can you say that? Can you prove that? I most certainly can. Look there in Genesis chapter 2. I want you to follow with me. I'm going to show you this to understand that after they saw with their mind that it was a tree that was good to make one wise. God never said that. They gained a wisdom from a knowledge outside of God that God never, ever intended man to have. So we're there in chapter 3. Look at verse 17. Then to Adam he said, because you heeded the voice of your wife, have eaten from the tree of which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat. Cursed is the ground for your sake. Question. Did God curse the ground? Read it again. Cursed is the ground because of your choice. Did you catch that? I'm not making it up. All this likeness and image that was profoundly given to this creature called man. Saying, we don't understand. When you make a choice, because you are here by purpose, every person that you are related to in your family, whatever, in that union of your life, every choice you make affects every single person. A man, his choice affects the wife, the son, the daughter, even the grandchildren. So understand why it is of the essence that our conclusions meet up with the conclusions of the Almighty. Jesus did it. In fact, when the Word became flesh, John 1:14, it's like Jesus coming in to the body of the first Adam in the fallen state, and he looks and he begins to see all of Adam's delusions, all of Adam's fallen conclusions. Oh, I see him. He's not talking anymore, not walking anymore. He's running. He's naked. He's ashamed. He's covering himself. And now he's making up excuses. First he said, oh, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Now it's that woman you gave me. He was delusional. So the last Adam walks into the body of the first Adam and he sees all the darkness. And he pitches tent, so to speak, because it says, and the Word became flesh and tabernacled amongst us. Tabernacle means dwelling. He was the walking tabernacle. He pitched tent inside of a fallen body to make sure he would cover every single one of our cries and make it right. So he just said, curse is the ground, Adam, because of you. I didn't curse it. Now you read on in chapter 4, Adam and Eve have Cain and Abel. Cain slew his brother Abel. Let's pick up in Genesis chapter 4, verse 10. And he said, what have you done? He's asking Cain. The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Did you hear that? Cain slew his brother. That means he took the knife, just like for a sacrifice, slit his throat from one ear to the other. And it says here, the voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. The ground has a voice. So now you are cursed from the earth, or by the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So now, when you till the ground, remember, be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, have dominion. But now he's fallen, made the wrong choice. And God's showing him, because of your wrong choice, because you went to the knowledge that I told you would bring you death, now look at the consequences. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you anymore. Wow. Question. So, Pastor, are you saying that creation, the earth, that is supposed to bring forth fruit from whatever I plant, now can keep back from my planting because of the fall? Well, let me answer you with this, Matthew 13. The parables of the kingdom, the sower and the seed. 4 different types of ground. The wayside, which had no understanding. The stony ground that was uprooted as soon as they heard it. And you have the ground that also would not produce. It was a ground with weeds. It wouldn't allow the flourishing that it should have been. Fourthly, the good ground. But I told you, don't forget this important principle. It is the sower and the seed. The same sower for all 4 grounds. The same seed for all 4 grounds. Also important, the same amount of seed for all 4 grounds. Let's say he takes a bag and he pours it on the wayside. There was no understanding. Takes the same seed, pours it on the stony ground. Still, was not producing the fullness of fruit. The ground with the weeds, where it would choke up, it's the cares of the world, also did not produce the same. Finally, we come to the 4th ground, the good ground. But in the good ground, there's 3 returns. 30%, 60%, 100%. But look at the key. Why in the good ground was a portion of only 30%? 60% and 100%. What was it the ground was dependent upon for the percentage of the return? The understanding. The sower sowed the seed. Creation's return on good ground is 30, 60, and 100. Now remember this, Romans 8:19. The earth is in travail since the fall of man, but is awaiting. The earth is waiting, in fact, travailing for, the Greek says, the weos, the mature ones. Who are the mature ones? The mature ones are those that have matured to the understanding that we, creation, have been given authority over this earth to speak to it and allow it to produce and give us the return of 100-fold every single time. Man has not come to that understanding. But the whole sower and the seed was about the sower given the seed, but according to its understanding. So your return right now can only calculate to the percentile of your understanding of who you are, your identity, and your purpose here on this earth. But again, as I mentioned in Daniel chapter 7, the last Adam, what are we talking about? A type of him who was to come. Adam, first Adam, was a type before the fall of the one that was to come. Jesus, the Son of Man, the last Adam, was brought before the Ancient of Days in the ascension, and the same 3 things given to the first Adam before the fall were granted back to him. He was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom. Now, we are sons and daughters of the living God. Jesus prayed it in the only prayer ever mentioned in Scripture. Your kingdom come, and your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. So the Son of Man came to restore, to reconcile everything that was lost in the fall with the first Adam. So he comes, 1 Corinthians 15, as the last Adam, reconciling everything back so that now the sons and daughters of God on the earth, the weos, the mature ones, can now walk the earth again. Depending on your understanding, and the earth already knows, we were created to respond to the one called man. Why do you think, now I'll end with this. Why do you think all the effects that we find in the Gospels, Jesus telling Peter, a fisherman, come on, if you're in your right mind, you don't tell a fisherman how to fish. Take a hook, go to the nearest body of water, throw it in, there'll be a fish with a golden coin. Bring it back to pay y'all's taxes. I can imagine Peter walking over there. Who does he think he is? I'm a professional. I know how to fish. He didn't tell me how far to go in the water. Didn't tell me what kind of bait. Said, Peter, just throw the hook. Now, fishermen, what are the chances of the one fish with the coin in its mouth to be caught? We don't think about those things. How did he take a boy's sack lunch and feed the thousands? The bread was multiplied and the fish. And at one time, 12 basketful left over. How do you walk on water? Asleep in a boat with professional fishermen. And the storm is going out of whack. And they ask him the question, they wake him up, Lord, carest thou not that we perish? Gets up from sleep, and he just speaks, and the storm is calm. Why did creation fall at his beck and call? Because creation knew who he was. Those 12 men walking with him did not. I say that to say this. When you understand the first pillar, truth, 4 pillars, who's God? Who am I? What I've been given? What am I doing with it? God is good. Secondly, what am I? I identify with God. God sees me through the Son. Thirdly, I've been given something. What is it? An inheritance. Fourthly, what are you doing with your inheritance? What's our inheritance? The kingdom. It's in the kingdom. Matthew 4:17. From this day forth, I'll begin to manifest the kingdom. Are there any blind in the kingdom in heaven? No. Any cripple in the kingdom of heaven? No. So he was manifesting on the earth exactly what was in the kingdom of heaven. That's what we're supposed to do. That is our inheritance. And secondly, will you spend it? So again, Adam is a type of him who was to come. So if you understand origin, look at the origin of this man before the fall. And look at the glory that was all over this creature. But here's the point. If through Adam, all of us were made sinners, Romans chapter 5, through his disobedience, hearing amiss, we all became sinners. To the obedience of the one, Christ, now becoming the righteousness of God, what are we waiting for? To now follow suit. Adam was in likeness of the last Adam, but he fell. Jesus came to undo the first Adam, and now we are God's righteousness. But do you believe it? I'll tell you what, once you begin to have that belief system, that mindset, that Christological lens, see this through the lenses of Christ, you begin to identify. Not only that, you begin to live and see the same results as Jesus. It's all based on understanding. So Adam was a type of him who was to come. He came in likeness of simple flesh to undo Adam, to undo us. So now, when you see yourself in Scripture and you see Christ being holy, perfect, and righteous, you begin to see yourself in like manner. It's not a boast. It's a conclusion. God has concluded with it. When will you? Saints, again, so good being with you all tonight. Thank you for joining us, House of Many Waters. Don't forget, Church of Acts here in San Antonio, 9965 Creewall Road at 11 o'clock. Start worship on Sunday, about noonish. After the worship, we begin service as far as the message. So again, stay with us. Thank you for joining us on House of Many Waters. Till next time, God bless.